Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Abe with MysticGenMara.com, a small town mystic from the middle of Idaho. And today I would like to go over a little bit about what it means to be in the season of Aries. As I am normally working with the elements, Aries is under the banner of fire. So we'll poke a little bit into this just to see how far we go. Last Thursday, so it would be about 5 days from when this video goes live, we entered the Aries season on March 20th. The Aries is the fiery aspect of the beginning of the calendar, and it's very much about masculine energy and the energy of beginning new things, starting new things, that spark of passion or inspiration that flames up quickly but also can die out just as quickly. So, where a lot of the times we like to see Samhain through Yule as our New Year's season in the pagan community, and everyone's a little bit different, so not making shade or not making blanket statements, the beginning of the Zodiac actually starts in March with the Aries season. And it's usually right around the equinox, around the 21st of March. Like I said, this year it was on the 20th is when the actual shift occurred, so we'll go with that. When we look at the animals associated with Aries, it's generally seen to be the ram, kind of a hot-headed little creature that likes to headbutt everything. It also shows virility, but also this intense stubbornness, which again, not always the greatest thing to have together. It's calls you to be more courageous. Are you willing to step up? Are you willing to go out and do the thing? And that's what this energy is all about. It's perfectly aligned with the spring as we move into the babies being born. We're getting into this fertility aspect of spring, moving in towards Beltane. So this is like the perfect energy to get things fired up and get things moving in the right direction. It's also really important to understand that fire, Aries in particular, is tied to the warrior spirit. This is tied also to the energy of the planet Mars, so we're dealing with like masculinity in its purest form, but also with pretty heavy aggression. There's a lot of war aspect that goes with Aries. Again, long term doesn't always last, but this is where things like to start. And if we look at the energies of Aries and Mars and fire, the stones, metals, and etc. things you can use to celebrate the season, decorate your altar with, wear if you choose, would be iron. Good one to keep fairies away too, by the way. Garnet and diamonds, sharp, strong, powerful. Rubies and garnets are blood red. They are so beautiful, but they're also aspects of Aries. And if you look at healing using the Zodiac, which is, if you've ever been around people who do a lot of ranching, especially the old school ranchers, they do a lot of things based on where the moon is in the Zodiac. So Aries is saying that the blood flow is being drawn into the head. Hot-headed energy, fiery tempers, it's where the blood is more sitting. And you might notice, if you're really sensitive to lunar energies, during a Aries moon, when the moon's in Aries, you're a little bit more susceptible to headaches. You might have your temper a little bit more heightened. It's like 2 days out of the month. You might be really sensitive to that, and if you are, it's probably because you're, waking things up and heading into that good spiritual journey aspect of life. And it's also a really bad time when the moon's in Aries to do any form of work, surgically or otherwise, to the head. Let the energy drop back down your body before you start, having dentistry work done, unless it's an emergency, obviously. Not medical advice, just going by what the historical record is. Because if you do anything at this point, even getting a piercing when the moon is in Aries during those 2 to 3 days of the month, you'll notice that the bleeding is worse and it takes longer to heal. So you want to make sure that you're watching that Zodiac to keep it away from your head, away from Aries, is the best option. And the sun in Aries is not as aggressive in that aspect. It's the moon. Moon controls the water, while blood is water. Therefore, it's a little different. But when we look at the sun in Aries, this is where you start to get clarity of vision. This is where things are being burned away. Passions tend to be really aggressive. Fire tends to stir that stuff up. So be aware things, you might feel a little more amorous at this point in time. But it also is saying that the blocks, things that are in your way, are now being burned down because they don't need to be there anymore. So the sun in Aries triggers, calls forth, and inspires new ideas, new thoughts, new creations. It is the beginning of a period of your passion. It's the beginning of the Zodiac cycle. It's a beginning of your soul's journey, if we're going to look at it from that perspective. So you start in Aries, you end in Pisces, but it's not always a one and done. Sometimes you have to go through that cycle a few times and spiral up to get to where you need to be. So the sign of Aries, so much fun, but it brings the warrior energy out in a person. It's not always the gentle. Aries is not known to be gentle in general. It's just that's not the energy here. This triggers and brings out enhanced by the energy of fire, that passionate aspect of life. The warrior gods of Mars, and you've got Mars, Aries, even to a certain extent Hephaestus, the blacksmith, he worked with fire a lot. So you've got this energy of like the perfect masculine, but it's the warrior aspect. We're not looking into the sage, we're not looking into the teacher, the father. This sign is not generally known to be that compassionate, so just as a heads up. When we look at Aries in that aspect, we're talking about survival will. This is your root chakra energy. This is keeping this meat suit alive, not really worrying about the rest of the world or anyone else, because you're not into that chakra, you're in the root. This is the lower will, if you will. This is the will to survive for you personally, not your tribe, not your bloodline, you. And this is where we get that fight or flight response. Generally with Aries, it's fight. There's not a lot of running away. That violates their courageous aspect. So it's ingrained in the genetic line of the masculine nature to be a lot more defensive and a lot more protective. That also ties into a fairly large amount of aggression. And don't get me wrong, there's a reason they call it mama bear energy, because when a woman taps into her Aries and she has to defend what is hers, let's just say you don't want to get in front of that ever. So this is where we get into a lot of that energy. This specific kind of energy, the Aries energy, is very flashy. There's not a lot that sustains it. So it flashes up quick, burns really hot, and then just dies down because it burns everything up. It's not like some of the other ones, like the other fire energy I've noticed that is very stable when given the proper support is Sagittarius. They will bank their fire and they can go for a long time, and they support and they uplift. Aries, flash in the pan. They are really good at getting things started, but they have like no staying power. They'll get it going, but then they rely on other people to keep it moving because that's not Aries nature. Now, each person is different. It depends on what else is going on in your chart, so that has play a big aspect of this. But generally, they just get really interested, really deep, really quick, and then get bored. Just what it is. And if you are looking for a lesson, something to work on for an Aries, that is the discipline. That is that staying focused, you got this started, carry it to completion. I'm sure you've met at least one person who has in their crafting room or in their project room, whatever they want to call it, a bazillion unfinished works in progress. And if you find out that they're Aries, that makes complete sense. They have a hard time taking things to completion. It's just part of their nature. Now, again, they can be stabilized, especially if you are an Aries yourself and you partner with an Earth sign. I'm feeling more Libra, Capricorn. I would probably stay away from Taurus because they're more bullheaded than the Aries are. that can actually be very supportive and strengthening, because Aries needs to have someone to ground them, but the other two need something to help stimulate their fire, so you get a good balance there. Um, Sorry, my notes just moved on me. So the discipline of the warrior is things you can look at as like the Knights of the Round Table, the ancient martial arts masters, honor, integrity, civility on the battlefield, knowing what the concept of actual chivalry is. It gets thrown around a lot today. It's not always what you think it is. There's a specific code of conduct for a specific class of person, and that's what chivalry was intended for. It's not to be thrown around like it is today. There was actually a lot of codes that went along with it, and the more you dig into it, the more like, wait, what? You get into. And we're not doing chivalry right now. That's just an aspect of what it would mean and be beneficial for an Aries to start focusing on and getting a little bit more tuned into, because it helps stabilize that flashy, aggressive nature. And as I've said multiple times before, I am not as comfortable with the Zodiac as I'd like. So Aries rules the first house, things that I've been learning. And this is the house of the self. This is a very selfish aspect of a person. This is where your self-awareness is one of the first things that we come to understand. Again, talking into that root chakra energy. This is when we learn the discipline from that aspect, it helps us to be real with ourselves. It helps us to be open and honest with who we are. That person we look at in the mirror, put your mirror up there, hold it up and be like, oh, I have to be nice to you? Yeah, that's part of that. And this is one of the reasons where a lot of the times I will talk about learning a physical art form, whether it is Tai Chi, whether it is yoga, even Qigong to a certain extent. These are ways to help us tap back into our bodies. It brings that fire into a controlled state. It wakes up your moon sign. It wakes up your rising sign. It helps you counterbalance that flashy Aries fire and brings you more into a state of wholeness where, yes, you have that warrior, you have that fiery, creative aspect, but it no longer dominates every action in your life. It still allows you to develop those new things, but it shows you a path to completion. So getting these physical art forms more tuned in is super beneficial. So when we look at the energy of Aries overall, we are seeing this energy of the power of I am. This is that start motion. This is those mantras to tap into our greater awareness, if you will. There are a lot of different ways to do that, a lot of meditations to help you tap into the I am, and I might toss one in here a little bit later, but for now I wanted to just kind of go over some of the basics of what it means to have Aries energy. It's very flashy, it's very start oriented. Generally Aries will get things going and then wander off. If you've ever had that manager, and I think we all have to some extent, that gets really excited and really almost aggressive about getting this one project going, gets a bunch of people involved, and then they just disappear. You're like, wait, where'd you go? Generally, if you look into it, they're an Aries. They do not have staying power. In a dating situation, an Aries literally can have 50 dates in the course of a very short window of time. In a month, they could have a new date every night. Until they get the partner who can catch that fire and stabilize it, they are just a flash in the pan. They bounce around all the time. Again, depends on what else is in your chart. I've been doing a lot of research. I've got a friend in my day job that is really into the Zodiac, and because I am more understanding of elements, we're bouncing a lot off of each other. And so when you start to look at it from what else is in your Aries house, what's in your first house, it can change the dynamic of that flashy Aries. It can change that non-focused or hyper-aggressive aspect and bring it more into a logical perspective if there's some air tied in there. It stabilizes it and makes it more supportive, so it warms versus burns. with earth. If there's water, there definitely could be some conflict going on there, or it could be that their emotions are extremely out of control at times. So it's things like that when you start to really get into the zodiac, it can change perspective in a very large way. So again, this is just kind of a general introduction with Aries. I'll see if I can keep doing these with other ones. This one is one that I've just had some experience with friends of mine, so it makes a lot of sense to study some of these. And it's honestly fun when you watch your friend groups. Look for the ones who are flashy. Their tempers fire off real quick, but then they settle down just as fast. Or the ones that start a bazillion projects, like I said, the craft room full of work in progresses. Or the ones that like start reading a book, get 2 chapters in, and put it back on the shelf, never to open it again. There's a very distinct pattern with Aries. They love to start, don't always take it to the end. So again, just some general thoughts on the Aries energy we just stepped into. If you're interested, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what your thoughts are on Aries. If you know some Aries, how accurate some of this is, because this is a little bit of research, but a little bit of my own experience of dealing with Aries. So there's some of that. Also, there will be a link in the description for a birth chart if you're interested. It's a little natal chart. It gives you the full zodiac, 12 houses, and then it also shows all the little signs and symbols for when you were born. And then there's a 10 to 20 page, depending on what's all there, description and definition of what all that is. There's so much fun information out there, and that's one of the reasons that Zodiac is just a little bit intimidating to me. Astrology in general, is there's just so much there. But in the personality aspect, when you look at Aries, those guys have a pretty distinctive pattern with them. Again, it's flashy, very passionate, not a lot of staying power unless they get stabilized, generally with earth or air. So with that, I will let you guys go. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next video.